wasted. And that is the system into which we are locked, because if you put in 100 energy units into a given system using centrifugal technology and explosive technology, then what you get as a return is only 13 usable units. 13%. If you invest that 13% in the same system, then what you get back is only 1.69%. And so it is a self-annihilating technology into which we are presently locked at the moment. And what it requires is a change away from the explosive technology to an implosive technology, which we once again start integrating. Now, in this process, we can see that with the increase in our technology, we are, and its effects, we are gradually accelerating a downward curve towards entropy, because this process of division reduces things to their smaller and smaller components, to greater states of uniformity. And finally, in uniformity, there is no life at all, because there are no differences. Life is made out of differences. So the upward green line here is nature's process of ectropy, in which higher and more complex systems are built on lower ones. And in a sense, it's a far more stable system, because the more complex it is, the more diversified it is, the more legs you have to stand on. So if one accidentally gets pulled out, then the whole thing doesn't collapse. Whereas with a system which is going further and further towards uniformity, then if one leg pulls out, then you have a very serious problem on your hands. In terms of the actual use of energy, just a few parallels need to be drawn between how we use energy and how nature uses it. Now, for a human being, needs their energy requirement for 1 year is about 1,000 kilowatt hours, and 1,000 kilowatt hours is also what averagely falls per square meter on the sun, the energy from the sun, which averagely falls per square meter. So if a human being was able to transmute the energy from the sun directly into energy, its energy requirement would be satisfied. Coupled with this requirement of 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy, there's also an oxygen consumption of 260 kilograms a year, which ends up being about, I think on this thing it's 29.7 grams an hour. And a car, on the other hand, when it's driving, I've got the figures here, driving at average speed of 50 kilometers an hour, consumes within about 3 hours the energy that a human requires for a full year. Not only that, but it consumes also 750 times the amount of oxygen that a human being requires. So that in fact, when you sit in your car, you are driving, not only are you wasting energy because you're only functioning at 13% efficiency, but also there are 750 oxygen breathing slaves sitting in the car as you drive along. And when you extrapolate this worldwide into the quantity of oxygen consumption, then I think one seriously has to wonder how much oxygen is actually still going to be available to us, because it is only produced by the forest and by vegetation. And if we cut down the forest, then of course we remove the amount of oxygen which is produced. I think, and perhaps, when they first measured the quantity of available oxygen, there was plenty up at 100 kilometers, and now if they measured it, it would be considerably lower. But because we're living in the very bottom of this bucket, so to speak, we didn't notice that it's actually getting lower. I think it would be interesting to make some research into this area. Now, again, what is, again, something that seems to have been so obvious to all of us, and because there's any number of examples, are all the spiral forms that there are in nature. These drawings have been taken from a book published in 1908 by a man called John Bell Pettigrew. But if you look at them, and I'm not going to dwell on them for very long, I'm just going to pass them through, what you see in all of them is that there is no straight line, circle, and or point. So there none of these things can be drawn with any of the systems we usually use for designing whatever our technical artifacts are. Nature doesn't seem to have any use for straight lines. I mean, even in the In the galaxy, the same, that's the whirlpool galaxy. It's overlaid actually with the hyperbolic spiral of Viktor Schauberger, which is in its simplest form, again, so that you can see the outside, from the outside to the inside movement. It can also be mathematically defined. So most of these spiral forms can be reproduced in one form or another quite accurately mathematically. Again, you have another example, that's the eye of a hurricane. Again, we have this movement from the outside to the center, from practically no movement to very high movement, fast movement. And at the other end of the scale, it goes down to the DNA molecule. Again, all these vortical helical phenomena we can see, but we have never tried to copy them. For some reason, they're all associated with energy, but we just don't do anything with it. We are so fixed in our attitude to explosion technology with pistons and rams and wheels and all sorts of things like that. We don't seem to have come to grips with the idea of spiral movement. Now, again, according to Viktor, you see energy is primary and the form is the secondary effect. So that you have let's say we have an energy path which is represented by these blue and red core spirals, so to speak, which intertwine, being the female and male energies associating to create life. And into this wake is drawn matter. But the matter part of it can only go for a certain distance before the form itself ceases, because I'm not a continuous form. I'm a form which is finite in shape, but the energy which is passing through me is actually moving all the time. I don't know where it comes from, whether it goes in through my feet and out my head or the other way around, but there comes a point where the physical aspect has to stop, although the energy path is always moving. So that energy creates the path through which it wants to flow in whatever situation it is. So energy is primary and the physical form is the secondary effect. And you can see how beautiful this looks like in a water vortex. I don't think too many people would have seen a vortex like that. But this, again, is the beautiful form which water creates when it is moving down a hyperbolic cone. The actual positions of all these nodules, so to speak, can be calculated mathematically, and it's very interesting to note, just as a point here, that in English, what supports the human body is called the spinal column, and in German it's called the Wirbelsäule, and that translated directly into English means the spiral column, so that they think in German what supports your structure physically is the spiral column, and in German all the vertebrae are called vortices. And that is a completely different light on the whole thing. And so here, in a sense, we have what you might call a spiral column, which is very, very beautiful.